Hello, I am Vesta Copestakes, publisher of the Sonoma County Gazette. My motto is love where you live. And so tonight I have Carol Hart, who is the director of the Sonoma County Regional Parks. Now, I have a long love affair with regional parks, not just because I love to take hikes in all the various parks that exist, and I just came from the beach. And my God, what a beautiful place it is. And also I used to work for regional parks many years ago, creating their interpretive signs, working with park planners. And I did that for a number of years. And that's the kind of thing that gets you really hooked into the inside track of how important parks are to society. When all the people come down to Steelhead Beach near where I live, they come because they don't have trees where they live. They don't have running water where they live. They live in housing developments, apartments, concrete, all these things that are the exact opposite of what a park is. And if you've ever read the Celestine Prophecies, you know that. How do you get your power back if someone has taken your power away from you? Which society does. Jobs, responsibilities, concrete, dirty air. You go and you be among the trees. You go and breathe the clean air. You get a roof off your head so that your mind can expand into the clouds and the birds. And last night I just watched this wonderful movie about the birds in Central Park that Laguna de Santa Rosa had viewed, so we could get an understanding of, oh my goodness, here's a piece of outside that some planners decades and decades ago created in the middle of Manhattan, and what it does for people to be in among the trees and to see nature. It changes how they feel about themselves, about their lives. It lightens the load. So Carol Hart is here tonight to talk about how we can keep our parks alive and vital. Funding is always an issue. I don't care what the subject is, funding is an issue. But parks, sometimes people go, well, that's not important. Oh, yes, it is. It's extremely important. And Carol's going to tell you all about why it's important. And then also, Measure J is on our November ballot. And this is an opportunity for us to put a little money into the parks to make sure we keep our parks open, maintain the parks we currently have, and expand on parks where those are open spaces for us that we don't have necessarily access to, but we use a little bit of money, we will. So Carol, take it away. Tell us all about why Measure J is important, what you think, where's your passion with parks? You can start a little bit about how you got wrapped up in parks, right, because some people should know how you got wrapped up in parks.
Wow, that's such a cool intro, Vesta. Thanks so much. And I just love the Gazette because the way you always talk about how important it is where we live, how amazing the outdoors are here. I love it when you talk about vacation at home. And it's so true. Sonoma County is one of the most diverse, biodiverse states in the world. You know, they have what are called, as you well know, biodiversity hotspots and in the world. There are very few. And California is one of the most intense biodiversity hotspots. Then when you bring it down to Sonoma County with the mountains, the laguna, the river, the ocean, the redwoods, the coastal bluffs, the dairy lands, the farmlands, it's unbelievable what we have here and how precious it is. But what we don't have here, that almost every other Bay Area county has, is a dedicated funding source for our parks. It's almost unbelievable that we could have gotten to this point with now over 12,000 acres of parkland and thousands of acres more that have already been bought by our incredible Open Space and Ag Preservation District, which is an acquisition entity, but not a park management entity. So that land is sitting there waiting for us. It's waiting for us to be able to access it. And that's why we need Measure J, which makes me think of Measure Joy. J for joy.
I like
because
that one.
We have so much joy in the parks.
Yeah. So that's the big difference. The open space can buy land and preserve it, like our Measure M for open space districts and Green Belt Alliance, the Green Belts and all that world. But if the land is purchased, we don't necessarily have access to it. So parks allow us to have access to it. But that's huge. That costs a lot of money.
It does, and I mean the district really, the voters in 2006 changed the open space district measure to provide from that measure 10%, but only 10% for all land management entities, whether it's us or the cities or nonprofits, to manage land that they buy for public access. So it's a very tiny little part of their overall funding source, and that can only be used for what's called initial public access, which is very basic, a very basic toilet facility, a very basic trail, very basic parking.
Parking lot.
And it only and then only 3 years. So after 3 years, it's on us. So that's why we have all these properties that are waiting for some kind of, the Board of Supervisors needs some kind of assurance that there's going to be funding before they'll allow regional parks to take these properties. And some of them are the most spectacular properties you've ever seen on the coast. The Carrington Ranch, for example, which is at the intersection of Coleman Valley Road and Highway 1.
Oh, I know where that is.
Between Salmon Creek and Coleman Valley Road. It's just spectacular. It's breathtaking. Right up the coast is what's called the Poff Ranch, which is, if you go straight up from Highway 1, this property sits on a very steep kind of cliff and then goes over to the Willow Creek watershed. It links to that, which is a state park that we're looking forward to working with state parks on co-management should Measure J pass. But that property, you literally can sit on that property at the edge, at the bluff, and I don't even know how high up you are, but very high, and you can see all the way up and down the coast. And that's the kind of thing when you're talking about that mental just relief and physical relief and joy you get from being outdoors. These are the kind of places that we have a right to go to. We bought them with our tax money, but now we need just a little bit more so that we can operate them in perpetuity for ourselves and for future generations too.
That
so
must be high enough to escape the tsunami.
Yeah, it is. Tsunami exit plan.
Yes.
No, and it's not just the coast, it's all over the county. Now we have 56 regional parks and trails in this county, and we have such an amazing system here, but we need to take care of it. We need to make sure that we're able to, for example, let's just take the West County Trail between Sebastopol and Santa Rosa, the Joe Rodota West County Trail. I mean, that's been there a long time, and we have bridges that are it was a railroad right-of-way. So the bridges are falling down. We need to be able to repair those, and we need to be able to make sure that the trail is safe. So
that connects to the Prince Greenway that runs through Santa Rosa or runs into Santa Rosa?
Right.
And is the Prince Greenway managed by regional parks?
No, it's a Santa Rosa city park, and there is a tax base in Santa Rosa for their own city parks, and that's why this particular measure is focused on our regional park system, our county park system, which has no funding source.
Well, see, I didn't know that. So we all assume that there's money in the county budget for our regional parks, but you're saying there isn't. How do you get your money?
Well, there is, but it's up to the board each year to determine how much regional parks will get. And for example, last year we got less than we got 5 years ago. Last year we got $4.8 million from the general fund. 5 years ago we got $4.9 million, and this is from a $1.2 billion general fund. So a lot of that $1.2 billion is already pre-designated for health or for human services. A big chunk is for public safety. Another big chunk is for roads. And frankly, Parks really has to battle it out at the end of the day to get what we can. Luckily in this county, you can love tourists, you can not love tourists, but one good thing about tourists is they bring tax money into our county, and some of that tax money gets used for parks, up to $3 million a year.
Does any of that tax money that the tourists bring in get used for roads that go to the parks?
The Doran Road?
Yeah.
So that Doran Road repair, I mean, that was out of TOT, and yeah, I mean, it does. They take, it goes into the general fund, and they determine that they try to link it to tourism-based services.
Well, I know when you brought this before the Board of Supervisors, one of the things that Craig Harrison, right, from SOS Roads, he objected. He said, we need money for roads. Why are we putting money into parks when we need money for roads? That's probably an argument that you have to come up against a lot. How do you answer that when someone says, is it one or the other? Because it's not really one or the other. No. It's one of many. Right. There's a limited amount of money, and that's what this Measure J is okay, let's take our limited amount of money, and it's divided up amongst all the things you just mentioned, but we want a little tiny bit more to help open and maintain the current parks and open new parks.
And also build new trails. I mean, we didn't talk about the coastal trail, completing the coastal trail so people in Bodega Bay can actually have an incredible experience walking through their town, not in the middle of Highway 1.
Well, that was one of the ones you've gone to the presentations a number of times.
Yeah.
And people go, we need a sidewalk. Right. And you're dealing with Caltrans. So there's all these safety issues about trying to get from one place to another in Bodega Bay along the coast, and literally people are walking right up against the cars. So Regional Parks is trying to have a coastal trail trail
Right.
that allows safe passage from one place to another. That's a huge one. It's
It
only
is
on
a
the
huge
coast.
one, and I mean, most of these projects that we have in our map, which is behind me, are adopted projects that are on our website that we have already had public hearings on. The Coastal Trail is one of them, and we're building it. People say, is it possible you could do all these projects? And I say, look at all the projects we've done just in the last, I've been there for 6 years. We've just completed 2 sections of the Coastal Trail from Salmon Creek to the Nicholas Bell Tower.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say about, why this versus roads versus other priorities. One reason to really get behind a parks measure is because it's a relatively very small amount of money, in this case, a half cent. So that's 50 cents on $100, not food, not prescription drugs. One of the biggest inputs is people that are buying wine, which is a lot of tourists. But returning to this idea of, gosh, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, I will bring in one because
Yeah.
one of the things we look for is to have the tourists pay for a lot of things
Right.
that we love. So we say, okay, if we're going to put up with these people who are coming from elsewhere, because we do, we go, oh my God.
Like we never are tourists, right? We're
No,
never tourists.
We're always tourists.
Yeah,
We
that's the
love
thing
it. Oh, but the tourists don't drive the roads the way we drive the roads. They're looking out
But
the
it's so
window
funny,
and they're
because we're tourists when we go somewhere else too. It's
Yeah,
so funny how
I know, but this still is our home, and people
Of
are
course.
territorial.
Right.
So, but if they're going to come here, we want them to pay for things. So, in the case of a sales tax that doesn't
Right.
impact food and doesn't impact pharmacy,
Right.
then what we're saying is that people are coming here. They're going to restaurants, they're going to stores, they're buying things,
And going to wineries.
and going to wineries,
Mainly.
big time.
Big time.
And so they're helping us pay to keep our parks open. So
Right.
that's one of the things we need to think about. It's not just us who's paying for it. The tourists are coming here, spending money, paying for our parks.
Yeah, and it's really a big point. I remember where I was going with this. So compared to roads, compared to other priorities the county has, we generally, each dollar that we get, each dollar of tax we get from the general fund or TOT, if it's for a project that we're trying to build something, we leverage it. We leverage every dollar, anywhere
Okay,
between
explain
5
leverage
to
to someone who
10%.
doesn't know what that means.
So let's just talk again about, let's talk about Taylor Mountain.
Okay.
Taylor Mountain's a park a lot of people go to and love.
The views,
It's
the
the
views, oh my
backdrop
God.
to Santa Rosa. It's incredible. But you may have noticed pretty much, we for quite a while parked in kind of a gravel parking lot in an odd location that people couldn't find straight up the hill on a cattle road. So that is what we get when we get the land from the open space district. But what Parks did is we began trying to look for places to raise money so that we could build a new parking area, which we did at Petaluma Hill Road. We raised $750,000 from the state to build that parking area so that it was much more convenient. Then we raised all the money and worked with the Trails Council to build that fabulous trail. If you haven't been on it, you need to. Almost from the minute that you start out on the trail, you have incredible views of the entire Laguna and all of Santa Rosa. And then as you continue up, it's through just the most beautiful oak woodlands. So that trail, we raised the money for the parking area, we raised the money and worked with volunteers on the trail, and then we just got another grant of $1.7 million to build even more trails on Taylor Mountain. So the district bought the property, but we've raised all the money to do everything there.
And how did you raise that money?
We raised it from the state parks, from Prop 84, a bond measure that passed, and we got that because Taylor Mountain is considered a park for low-income population because it's adjacent to, an area that's park poor, the Moreland area, the Roseland area. We need to get people across that freeway and get them over to Taylor Mountain, which is one of the things we plan here is to really focus on a transit to trails so that we can make sure that there's some way, there's small shuttles or whatever to make sure people can get to the parks.
Okay,
that
now
can't.
just because the word Moreland came up, one of the things that you're doing is you are creating a park
Right.
in Moreland at the intersection where Andy Lopez lost his
Andy's
wife.
Unity Park.
Andy's Unity Park, and that's the name that everybody came up with and decided they settled on. That's spectacular because
Yeah.
that was just a big open field that nobody
Right.
had anything to, and like there's Bear Farm over not too far from there.
Which is awesome.
It is amazing, and
Yeah.
people actually eat off of that one.
Well, they'll hear it. We're going to have a community garden at Andy's Unity Park. That's
spectacular.
Because the community wanted it. The community designed that. So just so you know, it seems like the thing that was so particularly breathtakingly horrible about that whole situation is that that area was meant to be a park. It was meant to be a park for 20 years, and no one ever stepped up. And the city never annexed it, So city parks never took over, and the county never did anything about it. And that horrible thing that happened with kids wanting to go and shoot BB guns that look like real guns, and that whole horrible thing, if that location had been a park like it was supposed to be 20 years ago, Andy Lopez you very well believe that Andy Lopez would be alive today.
Well, and parks bring people together.
They bring people together.
They get to know each other, so they all know each other, and they all hang out with each other, and then they don't have fear, they have knowledge and connection. And that's the whole thing about this park. I always wanted something positive to come out of his death. And to me, this park is a real symbol of something positive that comes out. And you guys took it over. You really just, everybody said, we got to do something. And regional parks came in and said, we're the ones who are going to do it. And how you met with all the people in that neighborhood and brought them together. And they even argued over what the name was going to be.
And had the meetings on the land.
On the land.
Which was so fantastic.
And everybody brought food and they did things.
And that's credit to Steve Arrett and people in the planning division. They did an amazing job, and they brought in an amazing consultant. And they've just, but it was all about the community. Yeah, their vision, and their vision is fantastic, and I can't wait for that park to be completed. It's going to be fantastic.
A true example of a community park.
Right.
And then one of the things that I love is when you take a hike in a community park, wherever you are, you run into somebody. And after a while, you get to know all the people who regularly walk.
Yeah.
And so you suddenly make friendships and connections with people that you never would have met otherwise.
No, parks are the great unifier, and that's been, you talked about Central Park. That's always been the vision. And I always talk about somewhere like, but it's true of Central Park. If you live in New York City, I don't care how wealthy you are, if you want that experience of big boulders and beautiful lakes and giant meadows, I don't care how much money you have to go to Central Park. Yes. Just like the poorest person with no backyard and living in a basement apartment. That the parks bring everything together, and it's the same in Sonoma County. If you want to have the experience of Bodega Head and stand there and look down on the ocean and see the whales and hear the sea lions, you have to go to Bodega Head. I don't care how rich you are or how poor you are.
Well, that's one of the things about parks is that it is extremely inexpensive. I'm a senior now, and what is it, $39 a year?
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, I took my friend out to lunch today, and it cost us that much money just to have lunch. Okay, so now I have regional parks access all year long for $39 a year. And what is the park pass for a family?
It's the same. It's $69 for a car full of people. But the idea too here with this is, all our coastal parks are free now, all our coastal trails. If we have a full campground, full staff like Doran or Gualala, we still charge. But all of our coastal trails, Pinnacle Gulch, all of the Sea Ranch trails, those are all free, and all of our new trails are free. Our Laguna parks are free, all of that trail system. The trail that we're planning, one of the great, one of my favorite projects that will be funded from Measure J is a trail from Melita Road, which is at the edge of Annandale in Santa Rosa, all the way down Highway 12, completely off the road, multi-use, Class 1 trail, all the way to Agua Caliente in Sonoma.
That's spectacular.
And all of those times that all of us have driven through that beautiful area, and you just think, why do I have to be in my car in one of the most beautiful, it seems like it's always sunny there, there's amazing flowers, and you're always in your car. And it'll be so terrific, not just for people that want to go to parks, but people that want to go to all of the businesses, that want to go get a sandwich in Kenwood, that want to stop at the winery at St. Francis, or they want to go buy some, gift along the way at all those cool places. Parks make for a booming economy, and that's another thing that people, it's hard to put two and two together, but it's great for the wineries, really. Because
it truly is. Well, but then people can come, actually they can take a walk after they've had their glass of wine. But when parents with strollers, you want to have a nice paved path or something that's smooth, that's maintained, that you don't have to worry about stuff. You take your kid in the stroller and you head on down.
I was just sitting with a woman from Oakmont that I had never met. I just started talking about Measure J and the Oakmont, Measure J, because it's being charged to people as they come into the unincorporated area, regardless of where they're from. Likewise, if I go buy a computer in Santa Rosa, I won't pay anything. Measure J won't add anything to city taxes. So the point is that it's only the only people that will be able to vote on Measure J are the people that live outside the cities.
In the unincorporated
In the
areas.
unincorporated area.
Okay, so all unincorporated areas vote on Measure J.
Right.
How much does Measure J cost people?
So as I mentioned,
50
it doesn't
cents
cost
per $100?
anything if you go to the market and buy food. It doesn't cost anything if you go to the drugstore and get prescription drugs. But if you go to a restaurant and you have a $100 restaurant bill, it will be 50 cents additional.
So you'd think 50 cents is nothing.
Right.
I mean, even some of the poorest people would go 50 cents. Like, I dropped that on the ground out of my pocket.
Yeah, and I mean, people talk about the impact of sales taxes, but in terms of the regressive nature of them. But this particular one, because it's really, if you look at where the sales tax is coming from, it really is coming from high-end restaurants and hotels and wineries. It's not coming. I mean, most of us that live out there, and most of us that live out in the, I live in Occidental. I make my big purchases in Santa Rosa, so it's actually a positive that it's not going to be included in the cities. But again, I have to say, you have to focus on every other county except for Solano and Napa have decided to do this. We are the ones that have an economy based on outdoor recreation, the most amazing and important natural resources and ecosystem services. We have a big river running through our county that provides us all with water. It is impaired. We need to protect it. And the way you protect a watershed is by protecting the land around it. Mm-hmm. And we have a big natural resources section here that talks about land restoration, creek and stream restoration. Regional Parks now owns the top of Hood Mountain, the top of Taylor Mountain, the top of Sonoma Mountain, and we're going to be involved in the Willow Creek watershed. So by funding parks in a way that is appropriate, we protect our water sources, which is critical to all of us.
So in a lot of ways, Measure M for the open space districts and the green belts,
yes,
is very much a partnership with Measure J. So Measure M, Measure J, to me it's like a just do it. Say yes. Just say yes. Vote yes.
Exactly. They're total partners, and you protect your incredibly important separators. You move people in a way that they can be in community, and when they want to go outdoors, they have this amazing park system, and they don't have to get in a car. They can just get out and go on a trail to get to the parks. And it's about not a park here and a park there like we have now. We have great parks. We have Regal here, we have Riverfront here, we have Doran here, but there's no overall plan to connect them all for a system of parks, like the national park system or a state park system. We need to have a regional park system here that makes sense and is logical. And all of this is laid out in a plan that we have already put forward and adopted called the Sonoma County Integrated Parks Plan, that talks about a vision for Sonoma County where parks is integrated with local food, with tourism, with transportation, with outdoor recreation. How do parks bring all these things together to make our community beautiful and thriving into the future? And that's really what Measure J is about.
Could we see the map? Sean, could you show us the map that shows all the parks? Sean has it behind me and behind you, and there's a way for you to show the whole thing, right? Oops, it's done. There it is.
So these are projects, these are parks and trail projects. This is the expenditure plan in map form. So you can go online to our website, for SonomaCountyParks.org. If you go on our website, you can see the ordinance the board adopted that shows that this will be a measure with very strong oversight, that we can only spend the money on these projects. It's not to go to the general fund, to pay off pensions, nothing. This goes for these purposes that are laid out in the expenditure plan, and these are the projects on this map.
It's spectacular. So show the map again so we can see just how many there are in this map. This is rather astonishing how many parks there are. Regional parks I'm seeing most of the parks are in the middle of Sonoma County, in the middle and the bottom of Sonoma County, a little bit up north into Cloverdale. but it looks like a lot of parks are within easy access of Santa Rosa.
And the West County, they're all over.
They're both East County, West County, South
Petaluma. I mean, we've got Putnam and Tole to finally get Tole open, to build a visitor center there, to provide camping opportunities.
The best pumpkins ever. The pumpkin patch is unreal.
But Putnam improvements, the Petaluma Sebastopol Trail. There's a lot of trail projects. It really is. Every area of the county will see dramatic improvements from Measure J, as they should. People want to see, what do I get? If I agree that I'm going to vote yes on a sales tax, I want to get something big. I want to see something really happen that's transformative, and that's what Measure J is about.
It's pretty darned exciting that we can spend such a little bit of money on something so big. If you were to live in Santa Rosa, since this is a Santa Rosa channel, where is the closest park to, say, downtown Santa Rosa?
Well, Spring Lake.
Spring Lake, yes.
You know, Spring Lake is an amazing regional park, and of course it's part of a complex of parks with Annandale, which, by the way, Annandale is an example of, if you don't have a strong regional park system, Annandale would have been closed when it was set for closure. It was regional parks, our department, that managed Annandale when it was on the closure list, when we stepped in and managed it for a year. So that's just important to keep in mind, how if you love Annandale, then you should love regional parks.
And a lot of people love Annandale.
And a lot of people love Annandale,
because
so
it's right there for us.
But there's amazing parks that would be open, like Mark West Creek Regional Park and Open Space Preserve, which is it's the land across from Safari West. It's a big giant complex, about 1,000 acres,
yes,
with 3 creeks: Mill Creek, Mark West Creek, Porter Creek coming down. It's spectacular. It's still closed because we don't have the money. If we get Measure J, that'll be open, and that's pretty close to Santa Rosa, but there's a lot of projects in the area, a lot of trail projects. The Spring Lake Park Greenway, I was just speaking to that group. Yes. The Southeast Greenway, we have a connection from where their trail ends up to Spring Lake, and we want to make that happen. So that's Measure J too. But it's not a vague measure. It's a crystal clear, it's precisely defined. Look at where you live, find a park you care about, and I can bet that it will see improvements as a result of Measure J.
So I'd just like to close this up with, please vote for Measure J. This is for everyone. It's for tourists who come here, who want to spend their money here and pay for these parks, and it's for us to enjoy. So if you thought about it, that tourists are going to be paying for our parks that we get to enjoy all year long when they're not here, please vote for Measure J. I really appreciate Carol Hart and who she is and all the dedication she has to our community and to our parks. When she came on, she was a force to be reckoned with. So if you want to meet a powerful woman who's doing benefits for all of us, it's Carol Hart. And so it's yes on Measure J. Is that the website?
Yes on Measure J. Oh, no, it's yes for Sonoma County Parks.org.
Yes for Sonoma County Parks.org. And then you're going to get your ballots in the mail really soon. So yes on Measure J.